Hey, I'm Mike Myers, and this is the Songwriting for Guitar podcast, which is geared to support songwriters and producers to gain confidence and turn pro. I bring on industry experts to help you improve and monetize your skills, engage better in the writing process, and build healthy habits to create a sustainable career that you love. Caffeinated, inspirational, conversational. Hey, what's up, friends? Mike Myers here with the Songwriting for Guitar podcast, episode number 80. What's in your briefs? Now, this episode, Josh Doyle is back, one of our coaches, my mentor, friend, pal, compadre, and we're going to talk about sync licensing briefs. Now, these are the things that everybody wants, but once they get it, they still don't know what to do with it because it's deciphering this language, this code. What do they want? What do they not want? What's important? What's not important? What's vital? What's crucial? And we're going to get into all of that. And the way Josh really takes that brief and understands it and his interpretation and how it's worked to his success. So if you are someone that's in that mid-level or beginner level of sync, or you're reaching for that higher tier where Josh is, going after those ads, those trailers, you really have to listen to this episode because I know there were lots of moments you're going to hear where I was like, oh, what? That's where Josh really kind of opened my eyes to kind of his view. So here we go. Let's dive into it. Episode number 80. What's up, Josh? How are you?
I'm doing really well. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. This is your 47th time joining us again on the podcast.
Yeah, I think I need a Girl Scout sash with all of my little award pins for each time I've been on the...
It's like Saturday Night Live, isn't it? Like how many times you host? There's
right.
a certain amount of... I think it's like John Goodman has hosted the most, I think.
Right. There's like a secret club in the back.
We'll come up with something. I'll give you like a coffee mug or something that's just like...
Nice.
But I think this episode, we've had an insider session about this where we've talked about it. And even then we were like, there's still more we could talk about this because the idea of when you get into licensing, you get this thing that's called briefs, which is funny because it's like you think of underwear. It's just like,
underwear.
I've got lots of briefs. Cool. I mean, thanks for sharing that. But I have to dissect this brief. Okay, that's weird.
Well, yeah.
But we're going to get into the idea of, so when you get something like this to the point where you start making contact with a licensing agency or a music supervisor starts adding you to their email list and they start sending you, hey, I just got this brief. There is so many things, at least for me when I started, where it was like, okay, how much should I be following from this that they want, or how much should I not be following this? And to me, this seems like, I don't know, when you see that meme of like that guy looking and there's all these equations and like numbers floating around like,
Yeah.
What should this be? That's what it feels like because it's up to you to decipher what is important and what isn't. And that just seems impossible.
You know, the other added complication is that you remember like in elementary school playing the game of telephone where you'd like whisper to one friend and then they would whisper and it'd get all the way around the class. And did you ever play this?
No. What is this?
Oh, man.
Okay.
Man, our teachers always had us do it when we had like 5 minutes left of class and they couldn't they just had to like burn time. So basically, you're like sitting in rows, right?
Okay.
And
yeah.
so they would start at the beginning or, like the front corner. And the teacher would come up and whisper like a short phrase in your ear. And it would be like, I like bubblegum or something like that. And so you'd whisper it to that person. And by the time it got through like all 20 kids in your class, the thing was like, could they keep the message? And it never ended up being correct by the time, like by the end, it was like elephant shoe, tennis shoes or something like that. And it was like, that sounds nothing like I love bubblegum. And so it was always funny. It's kind of like Mad Libs a little bit. But, it's kind of like this with the briefs because it's coming from like a director who's then talking to the music supervisor who's then communicating it to their, to us.
Yeah.
And then we're trying to interpret it. So there is like this bit of like lost in translation a little bit.
That
so there's that psychology to it too.
That's a great, like, yeah, I've never heard of that game. That's really funny because it's just how many times does that phrase get changed a little bit and changed a little bit and changed a little bit?
Even just the slightest bit.
And just what you're describing right now, I didn't even think of that. Like the chain of like, oh, this and then this and this and this. What's changed in the delivery and how did so-and-so interpret what they said when they got that information?
Yeah, even if it's like from the director has a vision and they're too busy, so they assign it to their assistant director or maybe their music clearance person on their team, and then they're talking to the music supervisor.
Yeah.
Like there's definitely, and then you maybe have like the studio, the major label studio, the people in the suits, they're like putting in their 2 cents, which is diluting what's really going to end up on screen. Yeah, so there's a lot of. You definitely have to be thinking about that.
That blew my mind because if you go through that chain of command, each one is thinking of a different element of the song or why that's important or what that means. And so suddenly then we trickle down to now it's gotten into this little tiny like blurb. Yeah. And then maybe you get a reference or two. Not always. Right. Sometimes you just get like a scene or you get an emotion or a thing that they go, must have this word, must have this phrase. If you're lucky, you might get some example. You might, and then maybe you get too many examples. Sometimes you get you get 5 and you're just like, oh shit, which one do I listen? Which one do I use as my main one, my secondary? And can I listen to all of these and find the what is the continuing theme? Yeah. Oh, this is where it gets. Where I don't know if there's 2 ends of the pendulum where somebody it swings one way and they basically give. It's funny when you give someone new to this like, hey, this is your reference, go ahead and make something, and they make like a carbon copy. I mean, like verbatim. The melody is very similar. The sounds are similar, not like a lower version of the. And I don't mean that in a bad way because it's like. It's kind of like there's nothing wrong with the value time Cheerios from Walmart. It's like, it's great. It's delicious and it's awesome. But you could tell like, okay, the box is a little bit different than the Cheerios. But okay, that's what I feel you get. And that doesn't work. And then you swing to the other side of the pendulum, which is, cool, I'm going to take this brief. And then they say, this was the brief and this is what they were looking for. And you're like, man, it's like searching through like a pearl and oatmeal or something. It's just like, I'm like, man, this is really messy. I don't know where you got this. Yeah. And it's like, what we're looking for is that middle ground, that sweet spot of like, cool, I can see how you use some of the elements. It's definitely fits that same vibe. I could find it in a playlist. But at the same time, it feels authentic, but it's different. It still is what they're looking for. And I think this will work. How do we get to that center? Without, those 2 opposite ends.
Yeah. I mean, the thing that I'm always looking at, always kind of coming back to is anytime they write like a little synopsis of what the scene is. Yeah. That usually seems to be the most honest because you're dealing with like, generally you're dealing with people who are great at telling visual stories, and they might have maybe they went to college and their favorite band was so and so and they really want to use it in this scene, and maybe it kind of works, but really like I don't know, like I think you have to look at the scene and get in tune with what the emotional target is. And yeah, I mean, the references are great, and, you can try and draw... I mean, I'm not understating the references at all, because it's, like, I almost never submit to briefs that don't have references if they're not, like, really... Okay. Yeah, we can get into that, too. But, yeah, I'm always just trying to get in tune with more in tune with, like, the story and the emotional target of like what they're trying to capture. What are they trying to support with this music in the story? That's almost like my main priority. And then it's like listening to the references. And those are really like kind of my 2 main things.
Now, I just for context for people, because especially if they're listening to this and they don't know Josh, I mean, you have hundreds upon hundreds of placements. One song, just one of your songs, has made well over 100,000 like that. Yeah. So it's just like, this isn't like you just being like, oh, you know what? It's like you've done this, where it's like you have a system and a process to where you built this is like, to me, that's interesting that you don't, if it doesn't have like a reference, you just like rarely do you go after it.
I was in the period where any brief that came in, I was writing to it. I was saving, like if I couldn't get to it that week by the deadline, I was still saving it, and it went on my list of like, I'm going to write something to that regardless of how poorly it was written or, you know, whatever. And I've done the thing where I've like, man, so many times I stayed up through the night to meet like a 24-hour deadline, and only to find out like the brief didn't have references. It was just like they didn't really know what they wanted, and I killed myself like getting a song done to pitch to it, and it didn't land. And I just like over time I just realized like those people don't really know what they want, and I feel sorry for the music supervisor because they're trying to like pick out of their brain what they're really going after, and they're doing their best. So I don't like necessarily blame anybody, but there's just certain circumstances where they want like something that's never been heard before, but they also want something that sounds retro and familiar, and they want, you know, all these like cool, they want to make their film seem like fresh and authentic, but they don't want to like copy anything that's come before. So then you're like stuck being like, what do you want? I would take, instead of like not writing for that brief and being like, oh, I'm going to go play video games, I'd be like, I'm going to take that time and write something that could be pitched later, you know?
It's interesting with those briefs to feel like you're describing ex-girlfriends, where I'm just like, I don't know what you want. I don't know what you want from me. You're describing somebody that doesn't exist, and I'm trying to give you something, but it's you're not even sure what you want. I don't think this can work.
Right.
But I'll take this information and I'll just learn from it, and I'll do something better.
Right.
But
I love that.
And I think, you know, the first question for a lot of people is, you know, we're talking about deciphering briefs. They're like one of the most, I think, some of the core basic questions when people are getting into this. They're like, how do I get a brief? Where do I get these briefs? Because that's, you know, they think that's the important question sometimes. Like, where do I get them? And I'm like, actually, before you get a brief, just kind of research a little bit what you want and what you want to do and what your strengths are, and go to something like a tune find and start seeing where those are placed. Because it's almost like you can see the end result of a brief. You can see the end result of like where it landed, what scene it was used, what was the title. I know sometimes you'll see like genres that are all over the place where you're just like, this makes no sense. Or you'll see like consistent patterns.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a great point. Like there is an art and an entire discussion that we could have about like how a brief is written, the way that they describe things, and, you know, different terms that they use in there. But that really isn't the end all be all, and that's not really where I would start. There was like a famous like publisher or producer or something like that said, like somebody asked them like, how do you write a hit song or something like that, and they said like, all the answers are on the radio. Like all the hit songs are on the radio, just go listen. And the same thing is kind of true for sync. Like what songs are being used in sync, like go watch a TV show, like go to Tune Find and listen to a bunch of songs that are being synced, and deconstruct as much as possible from that information. Like analyze the scene, analyze the song, analyze the emotional message. Like, are they complementing each other? Are they playing off of each other? Is the song being used ironically? You know, all that kind of stuff. All those answers are right there, and that's a lot more valuable, I think, than you know, just I need to get a brief, so like all the answers are going to be in the brief. They're not.
But because even if you, it's kind of like dog catching a car. If they get it, and it's like, what do I do with it? It's just like, I got it now, and it's just like, I'm not sure. Because, you know, if I got a brief probably at the beginning, I'd be like spinning my wheels. Like, you know, I'd have no idea what to do with it. But let's say you get to that point, so you make a connection, like you go to a conference, you meet a supervisor, and they like you, and they're like, hey, just give me your email and I'll start sending you stuff because, I think you have potential. When you get something that's describing a scene, and, just as you said, it's describing a scene, some emotion, there's maybe one or two references. Let's say you get a brief, and it's saying that it's for a Netflix trailer coming up, and it's a new one that's kind of a murder mystery, and they want a retro feel to it, but with contemporary elements.
Mm-hmm.
How would you interpret like that? Like, out of all of that, what's important?
I mean, all of those things have like really interesting and relevant information. So the fact that it's a promo means that it's going to be edited in a certain way. So if this is like, if they said it's ending credits for a film, then that means that they need like more of a slow burn of an ending credit, unless they give other instructions.
Okay,
but you can like really develop your idea, really get it moody, and the story's already been told. You're kind of like setting. This is like the end credits, so you can really do whatever. If it's a promo or a trailer, they're going to really be like cutting scenes and like emotional hit points and stuff like that. So you want to be composing your track in a way that has more kind of like dynamic moments and crescendos and things like that, transitions. So like there's that, the murder mystery, like there's a certain sound that might go. There's going to be more tension in the way that you write the song.
Can we unpack what you mean tension? Because maybe somebody's like, well, what does tension sound like? What is it? What does tension sound like to you?
Man, that's a great question. I mean, you can get into like the theory of like when you get like a chord progression of like, 1, 4, 5, and then it resolves back to 1, and like that kind of going, it like releases the tension in the way that you compose your chords and your melodies and stuff like that. That's a great question. Like, how do you like verbalize like what is tension? I don't know. I think this is like, going through these exercises of like looking at murder mystery scenes and listening to the music that they use. Like you have to kind of educate yourself, and it does become intuitive. Like you have to get a feeling of, I don't know. It's the same thing of like, you walk into your living room and your parents are having a conversation. Is there tension? Is there tension in the way that they're talking to each other? You just know. You can hear the tones. You can hear the language that's being used. The
inflections, all those things dictate where this is going. So it's like, that's what I think is really, can also be like stop people sometimes from going to a brief, because they're like, what do they mean tension? But I like how, some of those ideas of, cool, not resolving a progression and going slow and building it, and, dark sounds, maybe not so bright and cheery sounds, because then that feels too optimistic, or that feels hopeful. Do we want to give a feeling of like doom and just like, more risers and hits? And just as you said, if it's the trailer, then it's like, okay, then there are these cutoffs. There are these like, sometimes they're sharp, sometimes they're not sharp. So have a varied amount of like transitions. Then when they say retro, what does retro mean? It's just like, are we talking like, like Motown retro? Or it's like, are we going for the Gap Band? Or are we, like, what? What's retro?
So one of the things that I like to do with that, and then just kind of taking a step back, I'll get to the retro thing in a second.
Yeah.
Like, the murder mystery, like you could look at those two words and be like, how mysterious do I want to go? How murder dark do I want to go?
Yeah.
Right? Because you could, there's definitely, you could lean into either one. You could get into like murder, like somebody's like, that's the scene that you're going after.
Yeah.
Something that's like very, or you could go mystery, like, ooh, what's going on? Like, I don't understand, that kind of thing. All right. So like getting to the retro thing, and especially when they say like modern retro. Yeah. The thing that I like to do is break it up into frequencies or members of the band. Like if I'm imagining whatever song I'm writing on the stage, like who in the band are the retro players and who's bringing the modern. Yeah. And a lot of times I'll like to make the low end more modern and the mids and highs more retro. So I'll have like maybe 808 kicks and synth bass, and then kind of vintage horns and, kind of funky electric guitars or something like that. Just, yeah.
That is a great way of breaking it down. Like if you had that band just right there, who would be your like old school vintage players there? Like you're creating this band in your mind and being like, okay, but like the vintage player is next to like that 808 kick drum. And then, and it's just like, that is such an interesting way of thinking. And it just hit me, even though I made this up, I was like, oh yeah, like, murder mystery. They didn't say horror because that's a different realm in itself, because murder mystery implies, Murder on the Orient Express is like a murder mystery, and that's a little quirky. So it's like quirky kind of strings, but maybe, you could have that modern kick drum, but then it has like some quirkiness at the same time. Like Scream is a horror. Halloween, that's a horror. So that's a different type of like intense. So it's like maybe murder mystery is more, they want some elements of a quirky, but they didn't say quirky, but it needs to have like maybe some strings that are a little bit more like plucked staccato, but mixed with like things that have maybe some dirty. This is where it's like we could spend time just talking about this and the different options that we could use.
Yeah, that's a great point. That a lot of people see murder mystery and they get it confused with horror. And this is where, honestly, if I had any kind of relationship, if this was like an anonymous brief, which, sometimes a lot of them are, but if I had any kind of relationship or any kind of hint as to who the director might be, sometimes they'll say like, director from, these movies is now making a new one, and you can kind of get it. So I would go in like IMDb, like what other stuff have they done? Most likely this isn't their first murder mystery. And so I would go and see like, did they previously direct Scream? Are they now like coming from a Scream perspective into like a murder mystery, which means that it might be a little bit more intense? Or I don't know, Scream was kind of a comedy, wasn't it?
No, Scream was that was. I think so. Scream is the horror. That was their Scream 1, Scream 2. I think what you're thinking is, I think the Wayans brothers then did a movie that was based on it.
That's the one I saw. I never saw the original.
I
definitely want to be figuring that out before you write your song.
Oh, I think it was like Not Another Teen Movie. That's what it was.
Yeah, that was
And so it just kind of does the parody on Scream. Oh shit.
Yeah,
that's so funny.
All right. Oh. Yeah, all right. So you definitely don't want to get those confused. But anyway, like doing the research on where this is coming from, what their previous thing, then, that can kind of inform where you think this one might go.
Huge, yeah.
Yeah. Doing films is difficult. That's like anybody who like really pitches specifically for films, that's a harder one for me, because it's not like a TV series where you can go back to season 2 or 3 and see all the track, the path and the music that they've used. Films are like these one-off things, and even if it is like a part 2, like a sequel, a lot of times they might change their sound because they don't want to make the exact same movie again,
And it's funny because when you talk about that, that's kind of the benefit of sometimes starting off at the ground floor when you're starting out in sync, especially for those type of those low, I guess the low hanging fruit of never ending reality shows that are just a plethora. So whether it's, an underscore or something that is with vocals, like a Teen Mom, which, shout out Teen Mom. It's been good to me. It's been great. Like Teen Mom, Teen Mom 2, Teen Mom OG, 16 and Pregnant. And there's another one, I think it's like a Teen Mom, where they actually just have teen moms watch Teen Mom and they comment on Teen Mom. It's like commentary. It's very
meta.
It's a commentary. But like, those type of shows, even though it's easy to write it off and be like, oh, I don't need a brief for that. There needs to be, they pick certain songs, certain things that still have a formula. I've gotten a brief where it's just like, it's maybe not so much music centric, but lyrical centric. So what about those type of briefs where they emphasize certain words? They looking for this type, looking for this phrase. This is where someone maybe new is like, cool, I'm just gonna make that chorus. Good time, good time, good time, good time, good time, go.
Yeah, that's another, man, these are great great questions, great things to think about. So
it's like I prepped for this. It's like I
know, right?
It's like
you knew I was going to be here. I mean, I just randomly knocked on your door and you were like, no. Yeah, so that is something that a lot of people get wrong, especially when they're trying to pitch like a song that they've already written like 5 years ago. And, if it's Good Time, they'd be like, oh, I said Good Time once in like the end of my bridge, like right before, like there's like a half a second that is relevant and everything else in the song is like not about good time at all.
Yeah.
And that happens so many times. Like, nope, that's not what they're not going to use your half a second where you said good time here. They need like an entire, at least 30 seconds or a solid chorus that is capturing this theme of good time. Like it's not, I mean, sometimes they really do want that lyric, but a lot of times they will say, we want something with good time in it or something similar, like it can be, and that's really, again, like they're going after this vibe. They need it to capture the good time essence.
It's like you looked into that and you were like, yeah, I know what they're saying, but here's what they actually mean. So it's like, again, those two opposite ends of the pendulum. Someone's just like, oh my God, at the end of that phrase, we'll just cut off the word where I say no good time, but we'll just leave the no off and we'll have good time. But meanwhile, it's like, it's all, the feel is so not a good time. It's like, this is awful. Yeah. And then you have the opposite end that's too like, good time, and it's good time, and it's good.
Yeah.
And the vibe feels like so bad. It just is not, it's slapped together. Like they were trying too hard, and it just doesn't work.
Unless the brief is like super specific, like we want it to be good time, nothing else. If you send us any other word other than the word good and time, we are going to burn your house down. I will generally never write exactly what they're asking for a couple of reasons. Okay. One, because everybody else is going to be writing good time, and they're going to get inundated with those songs.
Ooh, okay.
And so if they want a good time song, they're going to get plenty of them. I am going to be the guy that's to the left and giving them something interesting. And so I'm going to like think of like, I'm not going to tell them go have a good time. I'm going to show them how to have a good time. And that's always been the way that I can take these themes that are difficult to write and not make them sound cheesy, because like when you're hanging out with your friends, nobody ever says, hey guys, let's go have a good time. This isn't Leave It to Beaver or Happy Days. So I'm always trying to think like,
kids aren't saying that anymore. Kids aren't being like,
no, man.
Let's get a sarsaparilla and have a good time down at the soda fountain. Hey, it's Mike. I just wanted to jump in the middle of this episode. Let me guess. You are a songwriter that is never short of ideas, but you've got a million voice memos. You've got them all categorized there. Tons of voice memos. Well, let me tell you something right now. You want to level up your game. But I'm going to be honest, those voice memos, you can't show those. What you need is a better recording, a better version. That means you have to break open your DAW. So whether it's Logic, whether it's Pro Tools, whether it's FL Studios, whether it's Ableton, here's the thing. It's overwhelming. It's confusing. It's daunting. It's so crippling. That's why Madeline Finn, one of our coaches, has a free series, DAW 101. So all you got to do is go to songwritingforguitar.com and you're going to scroll down to our free resources and you're going to see DAW 101. You're going to click it, you're going to sign up, and she's going to take you through the process of how to record a fantastic guitar vocal with minimal stress. It's going to sound way better than your voice memo that you feel great that you can show off to a producer, you could show off to a publisher, you could show off to your co-writer. You can convey your ideas much more effectively with a quality recording. So songwritingforguitar.com, scroll down to our free resources section and sign up for DAW 101. And what's interesting to me of how you framed this, you immediately thought, how can I separate myself from those? Because they're going to get inundated. You're right. They're going to get inundated with people that are going to be like, oh, good time, and 40 million songs. that are all going to say good time. But how can you move? That reminds me. So it's this book. It's Blue Ocean Strategy. And basically the concept is you could go to the red waters, and the red water is full of blood because people are doing the same thing and they're going after each other. And so that's an example of like everybody's writing good time. But Josh is like, how can I think out of the box and do something completely different, still in the vibe of what they want, but out of the hundreds they're going to get that say good time, here's mine that's the opposite of not saying good time, but still the vibe and the feel is like, this does feel like it's a good time. You're using the blue ocean strategy of like, I'm going to go into the waters where no one else is going. And that's going to be the thing that makes me stand out. And I'm like, damn, like not only are you deciphering it, but you're also thinking in advance, how can I separate myself from the masses that are going to just do this? Like they're not thinking about it. They're just like da 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 da. And probably their production is also going to sound da 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 like that because they're not really thinking of how can I make this stand out. And to me, that's also thinking long term because you're putting this time and energy into a song that you're not thinking, could this be one time that this has a lifespan? But like, I want this to have multiple placement and not just like this one instance where everybody's in that short-term mindset of like, get it, but it can't be used anywhere else.
Yeah, absolutely. Like these songs are, I mean, this is a whole other conversation, but these songs are like mini investments for me. They're investments of time, they're investments of money, and I want them to have a long life. I want them to at least have a relevance of 5 years. That's kind of my goal.
Oh, okay. So I like that you put a time to that.
Yeah, I had heard that somewhere where like, like how like the ukulele stomp clap thing kind of had a moment for, right? Yeah, and finger snaps and all that. That was like 2010 to 2015, and it still like occasionally gets used. Like there's an artist on 3 Theory that just got one place with Walmart, and it was like a kind of a happy-go-lucky ukulele kind of thing. But generally, like they had that was a time when like that was happening all the time, and then the whole like swagger stomp clap thing.
It's just like a very like. That was a very specific period. Is like that picked up where the ukulele left off.
It did.
And then it carried. And now it's kind of like trailing again, unless it's like time specific. Like, a quick little underscore of something that's so like low paying. Like, okay, cool. That's going to be like a $40 placement. Yeah.
Yeah. So these genres and things that are happening now aren't going to be happening 5 years from now. It's gonna transition into something else. So, but I do want the staying on the lyrical theme. Like I want the theme to be kind of universal and applicable to other scenarios. So like one just popped in my head. There's an artist on the 3 Theory roster. The band's called the BGP, and they've got a song called Every Day, and the hook is I want to do this every day, and it's such a great song. But that kind of could work for the good time.
Yeah.
Like that's another way of saying like, I want to have a good time. I want to do this every day. Those are basically saying the same thing.
I love that because you're also the first thing you said, you didn't just tell me about the lyrical content. You were like, it's a good song. And I think that's the other thing that people are missing. They're so sometimes into the brief that they're trying to be so robotic with the movement that the vibe and the feel of the song. And also to these things, and we've mentioned this in podcasts before where we talk about vibe and feel, which is sometimes so like, what does that mean? Yeah. Like we can't, there's no plugin that's just vibe, feel. We can't pull that up. It's like this instinctual, like, oh, that feels really good. Or we know just as human beings, like, oh, that feels off. That feels weird. And you're like, what does that mean? But you said, that's a great song. That's the element that people, when they get so into the brief, miss. Like, hey, don't forget, this is a song. Right. You got to listen to it. You want to listen to it, right?
Yeah, you're sending this to other human beings who are huge music fans. Like, you will never meet a bigger music fan than a music supervisor. And so if you send them bad songs, even if it hits the the target, you know, it checks all the boxes. If it's a bad song, if it's poorly written, out of tune, they're just not gonna put their own reputation on the line if it's a bad song.
Ooh.
You know, to forward it on to the director or whoever their client is.
That is, again, you're hitting these good points where I'm like, because you're thinking of a scenario. Like, okay, imagine your song, and they get it in their hands. Are they excited about it? I'm going to send this. Or are they going to be like, hey, director, I want you to hear this one. Good time, everything's good. Good time, go, go, go. Yeah. And it's like,
right.
no,
that director's going to fire him.
Never, and it is, because it's just like, is this a song that they would send that they would also... Their reputation is tied to my song, and they're okay with that. Oh, that's heavy. That's a different weight now. It's like...
it's a big responsibility for us as, like, songwriters. Like, we are giving them something that is tied to their reputation.
Wow. Yeah, I don't know why I didn't think of that, but I'm literally like, yeah, because they are huge music fans. Like, they have their genres that they love, and they can talk about it. They could talk about, you know, some of them are musicians themselves, and they're gearheads, and they're constantly immersed in that world, and they love to champion great songs. They don't like to champion songs that they don't believe in.
Yeah.
So that adds another element too, where it's like, even if you think, oh yeah, it's hitting the mark, do you think they would really love it and want to just like pitch it for no end? Like, you know, even if it doesn't get picked up, they're going to be like, hey, don't worry, I'm going to keep this in my catalog. I'm going to pitch this because I love this song. That's kind of also another good scenario. Even if it doesn't get used for that particular brief, do they love it enough that they're like, hey, that's okay. I'm going to pitch this song because this is really good. I believe that.
Right. Yeah.
Like, I think of like Maddie, like when you know, when we did like the Guardhouse stuff, I remember Stacey Coleman being like, I love her voice and anything that she does. She's like, can Maddie, it like was a huge, just like, I'm going to champion, like, I love her. Like, she's so excited about it. I'm like, awesome. There's something about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what I'm going after. Like, I don't know, there's a thing that happened for me. Like, when I first started, I was trying with syncs, I was trying to learn to read briefs, understand what they were going on, like all the dynamics. And I was writing songs that weren't great. But as soon as I kind of got the pieces in place of where it made sense for me and the angles that I wanted to come at it from that was authentic, there was something that like clicked, and I could immediately be like, this is a song I'm super proud of. I would want to release this and put my own name on it, and it works for this brief, and like it could work for all these things, instead of it being like, because early on it would be like, you know, I would write my own like good times, and I'd be like, this is awful, but it says good times, so I'm gonna pitch it. You know, I did what they said. It doesn't work.
What was it like? I think it was one of the first classes we did. They sent out something really quick, and I had no songs, but I had an old pop punk band, and I was like, and I just sent like, so that was not even close to like, and nothing, and I was like, God, that was a great song. But to me, great song was I already had a song. That was all it meant to me. Was just like I happened to have it. But to me, what you're saying is, okay, you are so excited about the song that you would tie your name to it. You would do that. I don't think a lot of people would. And I think that's the catch. They're just like, oh no, that's where you hear it. Well, I've got, this would be great for sync. And I'm like, I always shudder when I hear that. I'm like, oh, what does that mean?
Yeah.
And I'm like, what do you mean? Oh, you mean you happen to have a song that you can't do anything with, and you want to throw it at the wall and see if it gets placed.
Yeah.
No.
Right.
It's just like, it's not going to happen, because I would not listen to that.
Whenever I hear somebody say, I've got a song that's great for sync, it immediately makes me think that they've written a jingle.
Yes.
That they've like written a song about Huggies diapers, and they're like, I've got Huggies are mine, you know, whatever. Like, I love hugging my Huggies. And Yeah, and they think they've written a great song for sync.
Huggies, are you listening? Because that right there.
Yeah. Copyright. Yeah. And that's just not how it works.
No.
You can't send that song to Huggies. First of all, Huggies doesn't care. They don't handle their own music. If you tried sending it to the ad agency, they've already planned their marketing. It just doesn't work. You can't. If they want a jingle, they're going to hire somebody to write a jingle. They're not going to take some pre-existing song.
There was a time where that was a thing. And that's the and I think it's people's view of, it's like almost like their mind with this sort of realm. Has there been an update? And if not, they're still running on this old software of like, oh, that's a jingle and it works. That's what jingles are. My Coke, I'll shave the world a Coke. Everybody. There was a point where, that was a total. That was a thing.
Yeah.
It's changed drastically. And if you've not updated your mind with what's working right now, and you're running on this old software of like, that's a jingle. Like, I do get that a lot where it's, I don't know, do you get that too when you say you do music for TV and they're like, oh, jingles. And you're like, well, it's not like jingles at all. And they're like, oh, you write jingles. You do little things and little jingles. And it's like, actually, no, it's not little things and little snippets. It's like songs and production. And it's a lot more of that than like a do-do-do-do-do-do-do. Hey.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, it's really difficult to explain to people like or at least what I do. Like I'm writing real songs that just happen to get used in sync. Mm-hmm. That's the best way that I can do it. I'm not writing like sync songs. I'm not writing jingles. I'm writing real songs with real artists who a lot of times are like touring artists. Like they're
legitimate.
They're legitimate, and we're just guiding. I'm just making sure that this song doesn't drop any F-bombs and say that I hate corporate America. Other than that, it's going to be sync friendly.
I think that was a big game changer for me. It was like I started doing kind of like the fake sync at first, where it was just because it was like, oh yeah, this can work. And I was like, oh, wait a minute. Ew. It was just like, no, I wouldn't listen to this.
Right.
Then why would I?
Yeah.
And I think it's that time thing. Why would I invest my time into something that won't work, that is not, but if I pair with people that I love and I think, man, they've got a great voice, and they're also doing the thing. Like I'd be like, look, they're, this is a legitimate person, and also too, that's the thing supervisors love to champion. They don't want to champion good time go fun time band, where it's, I don't know. But that's like totally not real, but like, oh, this is legitimately an artist that has a great body of work, and they happen to have music that works for this, which is awesome.
Yeah. And if you think of all the bands that have become like sync darlings, like you think like Imagine Dragons had like a great run of years, like where all, they were just on everything. The Black Keys, basically just all these bands. I don't think any of them ever cared about sync, or maybe even were aware of it. They just happened to write songs that worked really well for it. And then you think about this, like you think about other artists who have just blown up, like Billie Eilish. Yeah. I have heard some of her stuff in sync, but she's not like become like a sync darling. Her music isn't great for it. I love her, but she happens to write songs that aren't great for sync.
That's a really good point, because then people would be like, I do stuff like Billie Eilish. It's like, that's awesome. Is there a need for it right now? Is there a need? And it's just like, that's interesting.
What's interesting is one of the syncs that I did hear of Billie Eilish was Bad Guy, and it was the instrumental, and it was used in a Walmart commercial. And it was so weird. It was so weird to hear like the yeah, under like Walmart voiceover of like, today at Walmart, family friendly deals, and like I'm like, they are totally just trying to like associate themselves with like whatever the cool new thing was. It was just like the weirdest sync I've.
That is bizarre, because it's just like, what's coming to Walmart? It's like,
it's a murder mystery. It's a murder mystery at Walmart.
But just in this discussion of how we've broken down, there's so much to decipher within a brief. Like, there's so many ways to unpack. And it's almost like the best way to do this is almost reverse roles. Pretend you're the music supervisor. Pretend you're the person there with the brief. And detach yourself for a moment that you're not writing or creating music, but just in your mind, what songs that are out there would you pick? What songs would you associate your name with and your reputation with that you would pitch? Not a writer, but just like to just cosplay for a second. Like, you're the music supervisor. You are going to be there and you're going to, these are the songs that you would pitch and why. Can you give me a reason why this works?
Yeah, that's a great exercise.
I think people need to do that consistently. Like, if they did that for an entire year or like 2 years, I think not only would their deciphering get better, but the songs they would then write would hit the mark more, be way more authentic, and they would see success. Yeah,
because you really have to think about it. I mean, like, no matter how much somebody loves the Eagles, like, you're not going to pick your favorite band all the time, or maybe ever. Like, I don't know how many times I've heard music supervisors say, I love this band, they're my favorite, and I can never pitch them for anything that I'm working on. They're just not right. So you have to, like, separate yourself from that, and just, you have to come up with strong arguments of, like, yes, this song captures the thing that is happening in this scene, and it's a great exercise and really helps your own songwriting, I think.
If people did this, especially if they're starting out, or if they've been doing this and nothing's happened, and everything's been like, it's just that, and they feel like, maybe I'm missing the mark. This is the best thing to do is, just detach yourself and to really go in and find what songs would you pitch and why would you pitch them. You probably wouldn't pick the Eagles. You probably wouldn't pick, because it's like, as much as I love it, it just doesn't work. If your income, let's say you're a supervisor, depended on that, would you choose that? Or would you be like, you know what, I'm going to be honest, I'm going to choose this because this works way better. To me, that would be a game changer for so many people.
Yeah, I think absolutely. That's great.
Well, Josh, this was, I'm sure we could keep on going. We'll just have to pick another one. You'll get another merit badge. You're going to get like another, you're going to get at least 12 at this point. And just like super stellar. And it's just like good times. We'll name
good. That's going to be my one for today. Good times.
Awesome, Josh. Thanks for being here.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
And that does it for this week's episode. Hey, if you enjoyed this episode and any of our previous episodes and you haven't given us a review on Apple Podcasts yet, can you just take a moment right now, scroll down, give us a 5-star review and talk about your favorite episode, and share an episode with a songwriting friend that you think would benefit from the things that we've shared. And if you have, thank you so much. You're the reason why we keep on putting out amazing episodes like this one and the one you'll hear next week. And like all of them, they were edited and produced by Chris Fafalius. I'm Mike Myers. Thanks for listening.